I'm Lindsay, 32, and my life as a financial advisor taught me everything about money except how it would nearly destroy my family. My younger sister Diana, 27, was always the favorite, the princess who got everything she wanted. Until she demanded $38,000 for a luxury car to impress her friends. When I refused, I never imagined she'd throw boiling coffee in my face and set my car ablaze in my own driveway. But my silence afterward confused her. One calculated move was all it took to bring her to her knees, begging for forgiveness. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to a toxic family member. Growing up in Boston's middle-class suburbs wasn't extraordinary, but our family dynamics were. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, worked themselves to exhaustion to give us comfortable lives. Mom was a dedicated nurse, working long shifts at Massachusetts General, while Dad built a small accounting practice from scratch. They instilled strong values in us both. At least they tried to. From the beginning, Diana and I were different. I saved my allowance. She spent hers before getting home from the store. I completed chores without prompting. Diana needed bribes and threats. My room was organized. Hers looked like a tornado testing ground. These differences might seem trivial, but they were early indicators of the fundamental disconnect in how we approached life. What really set our paths apart was how our parents responded to our behaviors. When I achieved something, honor roll, swim team captain, summer job promotions, I received measured praise and encouragement to keep working hard. But Diana's smallest accomplishments triggered excessive celebration. If she managed to clean her room, Mom would take her shopping. If she passed a test, not even aced it, just passed, Dad would take her for ice cream. Diana's more sensitive. Mom would explain when I questioned the disparity. She needs more encouragement. Dad would add, "You're naturally motivated, Lindsay. You don't need the extra push." By 12, I understood the imbalance, but accepted it as our family's operating system. Diana learned something different, that tears, tantrums, and manipulation yielded rewards. I remember my 16th birthday. After saving for months, I was $200 short of buying my first car, a used Honda with 120,000 miles, but perfect maintenance records. I'd researched it carefully, negotiated the price down, and planned to pay insurance through my after-school job. When I asked Dad if I could borrow the remaining $200, which I would repay, he hesitated, explaining finances were tight. That same week, Diana wanted an expensive dress for a middle school dance. Without hesitation, Mom and Dad spent $350 on the dress, shoes, and professional hairstyling. When I pointed out the inconsistency, Mom said, "Diana needs confidence. This is important for her social development." Everything changed when I was 17 and Diana was 12. Our parents' divorce shattered our family. The warning signs had been there: hushed arguments after we went to bed, separate vacations, growing silence at dinner. But the actual separation hit us differently. I channeled my grief into responsibility. With Mom now working extra shifts to compensate for the reduced household income, I stepped up, cooking, helping Diana with homework, managing grocery shopping. Meanwhile, Diana's entitled behavior intensified. She blamed our parents for ruining her life and demanded compensation in the form of new clothes, electronics, and special privileges. After high school, I worked through college at Northeastern, double majoring in finance and economics while juggling part-time jobs. Diana, meanwhile, barely graduated high school before dropping out of community college after one semester, claiming it was boring and pointless. While I shared a cramped apartment with 3 roommates to save money, Diana continuously cycled through retail jobs, quitting whenever a manager disrespected her by asking her to arrive on time or complete basic tasks. Our parents, especially Mom, continued enabling her. "She's finding herself," Mom would say after Diana quit her 5th job in 8 months. Dad was slightly more realistic, but still covered her rent when she couldn't pay. I tried having conversations with them about the long-term damage they were doing, but they dismissed my concerns as sibling rivalry. By 30, I had built a respectable career as a financial advisor at a Boston firm. I had a comfortable condo, a solid emergency fund, and investments growing steadily. Diana, at 25, had a sporadic employment history, mounting credit card debt, and a revolving door of friendships and relationships that inevitably collapsed under her expectations that others should cater to her needs. Despite everything, I tried maintaining a relationship with Diana. We'd meet for Sunday brunches occasionally, though these often ended with Diana complaining about her latest workplace injustice or friendship drama. I'd listen patiently, offer practical advice she'd ignore, and pick up the check while she was in the bathroom. Last Thanksgiving at Mom's house highlighted our dysfunction perfectly. I arrived early to help cook, bringing wine and dessert. Diana showed up 2 hours late, empty-handed, and announced she couldn't stay long because her friends were having a party. Mom rearranged the entire dinner schedule to accommodate her, while I silently mashed potatoes and bit my tongue. When Diana complimented my promotion with backhanded praise, "Must be nice having a boring, stable job," I smiled and changed the subject. Family peace seemed worth the occasional discomfort. I never imagined that maintaining that peace would cost me so much more than my pride. The call came on a Tuesday evening in April. I was reviewing client portfolios in my home office when Diana's name flashed on my phone screen. Considering she rarely called unless she needed something, I braced myself before answering. "Lindsay, thank God you picked up." Her voice had that artificial brightness that always preceded a request. "How's my successful big sister doing?" "I'm good, just working. What's up?" I kept my tone neutral, already anticipating what was coming. "So I've been thinking about my transportation situation," Diana began, as though she'd been contemplating a serious life philosophy rather than her latest whim. "My friends all have these amazing cars, and I'm still driving that old Civic Dad helped me buy 4 years ago." The Civic was perfectly functional and had low mileage, something I pointed out as she continued. "I found the perfect solution. There's this gorgeous BMW 3 Series at the dealership near me. It's exactly what I need for my new job." Diana had recently started as a receptionist at a real estate office, her longest employment stretch in years at 3 months. "That's great that you're saving up for a car upgrade," I replied, deliberately misunderstanding. "Well, that's why I'm calling you." Her voice shifted to what I called her little girl tone, the one she used with our parents when she wanted something expensive. "I need about $38,000 to make this happen." I nearly choked. $38,000? Diana, that's not a small loan. That's a massive financial commitment. But you have the money. I know how much financial advisors make. This is nothing for you. I took a deep breath. My finances aren't relevant here. That's an extremely expensive car for someone just starting a new job. Have you looked at more affordable options? I don't want affordable options. I deserve something nice for once. Her voice rose sharply. After everything I've been through. The conversation devolved from there. Diana cycled through her usual tactics. Guilt. You've always had everything easier than me. Appeals to family obligation. We're sisters. We're supposed to help each other. And hypothetical parental approval. Dad would want you to help me. When those failed, she switched to promises. She'd pay me back every cent. This car would help her keep her job. It would give her the confidence to finally get her life together. When I still refused, suggesting instead that I could help her find a reliable used car in the $10,000 range, her true colors emerged. "You've always been so selfish. You think you're better than everyone because you have your perfect little life and your perfect little job. You've never supported me." The irony of being called unsupportive by someone asking for $38,000 wasn't lost on me. "Diana, I'm not giving you that money. It's financially irresponsible, and it wouldn't actually help you in the long run. You'll regret this." she hissed before hanging up. That night, I called my boyfriend Jason to vent. We'd been dating for 2 years, and he'd witnessed enough of Diana's behavior to understand the situation. "You absolutely did the right thing," he assured me. "She's an adult. She needs to learn financial responsibility, not get rewarded for lacking it." "I know," I sighed, "but I hate that every interaction with her has to be a battle. I just wish we could have a normal sister relationship." "That requires two emotionally healthy people," Jason pointed out gently. "You can only control your side of that equation." I thought the matter was closed until 2 days later when Diana appeared at my workplace. I was with a client when my assistant Rachel rushed in during a break. "There's a woman in the lobby causing a scene," she whispered. "Says she's your sister and needs to see you immediately. She's getting pretty loud." Mortified, I excused myself and hurried to the lobby. Diana stood near the reception desk, her voice carrying throughout the open space. "I know she's here. Just tell her Diana needs to talk to her right now about our family emergency." "Diana," I hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a side hallway. "What are you doing?" "I'm with clients." "Well, you wouldn't answer my calls," she shot back. My phone showed 3 missed calls from her that morning while I was in meetings. "So you thought coming to my workplace and making a scene was appropriate?" I kept my voice low, aware of curious glances from colleagues and clients. "I needed to make sure you understood how serious this is," Diana insisted. "The dealership won't hold the car much longer." I already told my friends about it. Several coworkers pretended not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. My reputation for professionalism and calm decision-making was being undermined by this childish display. "I'm not discussing this here," I stated firmly. My answer hasn't changed. "I'm not giving you $38,000 for a luxury car." Diana's face contorted with rage. "Fine. Have it your way. But don't think this is over." She raised her voice deliberately. "Everyone should know what kind of person you really are. Someone who has plenty of money but won't help her own sister." As she stormed out, knocking over a potted plant for dramatic effect, I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment. My boss, Sandra, approached cautiously. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her expression. "Family matter," I replied tersely. "I apologize for the disruption." "Don't worry about it," Sandra said kindly. "We all have family. Take a minute if you need it." I didn't take that minute. Instead, I straightened my blazer, plastered on a professional smile, and returned to my client meeting. But Diana's parting words echoed ominously in my mind. "Don't think this is over." I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The confrontation at my office left me drained. By the time I finished damage control with colleagues and completed my client meetings, it was nearly 7 in the evening. The spring sun was setting as I drove home, mentally rehearsing how I'd explain the situation if Sandra brought it up again tomorrow. My professional reputation had taken years to build. Diana had nearly dented it in minutes. When I pulled into my driveway, I was surprised to see Diana's Civic parked on the street. She sat on my front steps, 2 coffee cups beside her. My first instinct was wariness, but something in her posture, shoulders slumped, head down, suggested contrition. "Hey," she said as I approached. "I brought peace offerings." She held up a coffee cup from my favorite local shop. I hesitated before accepting it. "Thanks. I didn't expect to see you after earlier." "I know. I'm really sorry about that." Diana's voice sounded genuinely remorseful. "I was way out of line coming to your workplace." I was just frustrated and not thinking clearly. Hope flickered in my chest. Maybe this was a breakthrough moment, Diana taking responsibility, acknowledging boundaries. We walked inside, and I set my bag down, relief washing over me at the thought that we might actually resolve this like adults. "I've been thinking about what you said," Diana continued, perching on my kitchen counter while I hung up my coat. "About financial responsibility and everything." "I appreciate that," I said, reaching for the coffee cup. "I really do want to help you, just in ways that are actually beneficial long-term." I get it now, Diana nodded, watching me intently as I raised the cup to my lips. The coffee seemed unusually hot for something purchased at least 20 minutes ago. I had barely taken a sip when Diana's expression changed, from contrition to cold satisfaction. In that split second, I realized my mistake. Actually, she said, sliding off the counter, what I realized is that you've always been a self-righteous bitch who thinks she knows best. With a deliberate motion, she reached out and knocked the bottom of my coffee cup upward. The scalding liquid exploded into my face, the pain immediate and shocking. I screamed, dropping the cup as the burning coffee soaked my blouse and skin. That's for thinking you're better than me, Diana snarled as I stumbled to the sink, desperately trying to splash cold water on my burning face and neck. Through my pain and shock, I heard her continue, maybe next time you'll think twice before refusing to help family. The front door slammed as I fumbled for my phone, my vision blurred by tears of pain. I called 911, barely able to explain what happened through my shock. The dispatcher kept me on the line until the ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. The EMTs worked quickly, assessing the burns on my face, neck, and chest. First-degree burns mostly, possibly second-degree in spots, one told me as they helped me onto a stretcher. You did the right thing getting cold water on it immediately. In the ambulance, my phone rang. My neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker. Lindsay? There's something wrong at your house. There's smoke coming from your driveway, and I think it's your car. My car, I repeated, confused through the pain medication the EMTs had administered. The fire department is already here, but you should know, I saw your sister running away just before I noticed the smoke. I recognized her from your family barbecue last summer. The EMT gently took the phone from my shaking hand. Ma'am, she's en route to the hospital for burn treatment. Can you give this information to the police when they arrive? At the hospital, everything moved in a blur of bright lights and concerned voices. The doctor confirmed mostly first-degree burns with a small patch of second-degree burn on my right cheek. You'll heal completely, she assured me, though you might have some redness for a few weeks. While a nurse applied medicated ointment to my burns, 2 police officers arrived to take my statement. They confirmed what Mrs. Whitaker had told me. Diana had set my car on fire in the driveway after assaulting me. A gas can was found nearby with her fingerprints. We have enough evidence to arrest your sister for assault and arson, Officer Reynolds explained. Do you want to press charges? The question hung in the air. Despite everything, Diana was still my sister. The thought of her in handcuffs in a jail cell made my stomach clench despite the pain she'd caused me. Can I think about it? I asked finally. Officer Reynolds nodded sympathetically. Take some time, but not too long. This kind of behavior typically escalates if there are no consequences. Jason arrived at the hospital, his face pale with shock and anger when he saw my bandaged face. I can't believe she did this to you, he said, gently taking my hand. Tell me you're pressing charges. I don't know yet, I admitted. It's complicated. There's nothing complicated about it, Jason insisted. She assaulted you and committed arson. She could have killed you. He was right, of course. The doctors had explained how fortunate I was that the coffee hadn't hit my eyes. The car fire could have spread to my house if the fire department hadn't responded so quickly. Diana's actions weren't just vindictive, they were dangerous. Yet as I lay in the hospital bed, pain medication dulling both my burns and my thoughts, I couldn't help remembering Diana as a little girl, following me around, wanting to wear my clothes, asking me to read her stories. Somewhere beneath the entitled, angry adult was the sister I'd once protected and loved. The sister I still loved, despite everything. I need time to think, I told Jason. He nodded, though his clenched jaw told me he disagreed. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. But Lindsay, at some point, protecting yourself has to take priority over protecting her from consequences. As I drifted off to sleep in the hospital room, one thought crystallized through the medication haze. This pattern couldn't continue. Something had to change fundamentally in our relationship. The question was whether that change would come through legal channels or if there might be another way, a way that could potentially heal rather than just punish. I had no answers yet, but as the medication pulled me under, a plan began forming in the back of my mind. The hospital discharged me the following day with medication, specialized burn cream, and strict instructions to keep the affected areas clean and protected. Jason drove me home, where I faced the charred remains of my car in the driveway, a stark reminder of Diana's vengeance. "I'll arrange for a rental car," Jason offered, guiding me inside. "And I'm staying with you for a few days." No arguments. I didn't have the energy to protest. The pain medication made thinking difficult, but one decision had solidified. I wouldn't respond to Diana immediately. This wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. While conventional wisdom urged immediate action, press charges, file restraining orders, cut all contact, something told me that would only reinforce Diana's victim mentality. She'd frame herself as the persecuted party, garner sympathy from our parents and friends, and learn nothing. Instead, I chose silence. Calculated, deliberate silence. "I don't understand," Jason said when I explained my decision. "She needs to face consequences." "She will," I promised. "But not in the way she expects." First, I documented everything. With Jason's help, I photographed my injuries from multiple angles, cataloging the healing process daily. I collected medical reports, ambulance bills, and treatment recommendations. We took extensive pictures of my destroyed car and obtained the fire department's incident report. I recorded a detailed account of both attacks while the memories were fresh, including Diana's exact words. My lawyer friend Rebecca visited 3 days after the incident, wincing at my bandaged face. "This is assault, clear and simple," she stated after reviewing my documentation. "Add arson and destruction of property, and she's looking at serious charges." The statute of limitations gives you time to decide, but stronger cases are built on immediate action. "I'm not ready to file charges yet," I explained. "But I want everything prepared if I decide to." Rebecca looked skeptical but nodded. "It's your decision. I'll draft the paperwork so it's ready when you need it." While I recovered at home, taking a week off work, Diana's true narrative emerged through social media and mutual friends. She'd constructed an entirely different story. According to her, I had been cruel and dismissive about her small request for help, had violently pushed her during an argument, and then tried to attack her when she came to apologize. The car fire wasn't mentioned at all. "Can you believe what she's saying?" my friend Melissa texted, forwarding screenshots of Diana's Facebook posts painting herself as the victim. "After what she did to you?" I wasn't surprised. Diana had always rewritten reality to suit her narrative. What did surprise me was how many people seemed to believe her, including our mother. "Mom called," Jason reported one evening, answering my phone while I napped. "Diana told her you two had a disagreement, and you're overreacting. She has no idea what actually happened." "Did you tell her?" "I started to, but she didn't seem to want to hear it. She said Diana was very upset and hoped you two could work things out soon." The unfairness stung, but it reinforced my approach. Direct confrontation wouldn't work with Diana or with those who enabled her behavior. I needed documentation, witnesses, and irrefutable evidence. Meanwhile, Diana grew increasingly unsettled by my silence. Her initial triumphant social media posts gave way to confusion, then paranoia. Some people think they can just ignore you when they're in the wrong. Funny how certain individuals disappear when they know they've messed up. Getting worried about my sister. She's not responding to anyone. Hope she's not planning something crazy. Her text messages followed a similar pattern. Day 3. I hope you learned your lesson about family obligations. Day 5. Hello? Are you seriously ignoring me after everything? Day 7. Mom's worried about you. At least tell her you're okay. Day 9. What are you doing? Why won't you respond? This is childish. Day 12. Are you talking to lawyers or something? Just tell me what you're planning. I read each message but never responded. This wasn't about punishing Diana, it was about refusing to participate in her drama cycle. For the first time in her life, she couldn't predict or control my reaction, and that uncertainty was clearly unnerving her. While maintaining my silence, I worked methodically behind the scenes. I filed comprehensive insurance claims for my car and medical expenses, ensuring adjusters had full documentation of the incident's cause. I contacted my credit monitoring service to place alerts on my accounts, suspecting Diana might escalate her retaliation. That precaution proved prescient when my bank called about suspicious credit card applications in my name. We flagged it because the applications came from a different IP address than you normally use, the fraud department representative explained. Someone applied for 3 credit cards using your social security number and employment information. Can you trace the IP address? I asked, already suspecting the answer. We can't disclose that to you, but we've included it in our fraud report, which you can reference if you decide to file a police report. Identity theft. Diana had crossed yet another line, one with serious legal implications. I added this information to my growing file. Rebecca called a few days later. Lindsay, your sister's digging herself deeper. These credit card applications are federal offenses. You need to report this. Not yet, I insisted. I'm waiting for something. What could you possibly be waiting for? Rebecca sounded exasperated. She's assaulted you, committed arson, and now identity theft. What more do you need? What I needed was for Diana to understand the full weight of her actions without being able to deflect or blame others. I needed her to face reality without the cushion of enablers or the convenient narrative of being victimized by the legal system. Most importantly, I needed our parents to see the truth, not my version or Diana's version, but the unvarnished reality of who their younger daughter had become under their indulgence. 2 weeks after the attack, Diana's messages turned desperate. Lindsay, please just talk to me. I don't know what you're doing and it's freaking me out. I might have overreacted a little. Can we please just discuss this? Are you trying to get me arrested? Is that your game? At least have the decency to tell me. Her escalating panic told me my approach was working. By removing myself as the reactive audience for her drama, I'd forced Diana to sit with the consequences of her actions without the immediate gratification of seeing my response. The pieces were falling into place. Now I just needed the right moment to make my move, one decisive action that would change our family dynamic forever. That moment came sooner than I expected, delivered right to my inbox in the form of a social media message from Diana to her friend, accidentally sent to me instead. I know Lindsay thinks she has some kind of proof against me, but it's her word against mine. Mom and Dad will never believe I'd do something like that. They always take my side, LOL. It was the final confirmation I needed. Diana felt untouchable, protected by the family system that had always insulated her from consequences. She had no remorse, only concern about being caught. I forwarded the message to Rebecca with 2 words, I'm ready. 3 weeks after the attack, with my face mostly healed save for some lingering redness, I invited my parents to dinner at my condo. I told them I wanted to discuss the situation with Diana in a neutral setting. They arrived looking worried, but relieved to see me. Lindsay, we've been so concerned, Mom said, hugging me carefully. Diana said you two had a falling out, but she wouldn't give us details. A falling out, I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. That's one way to put it. Dad studied my face, noticing the healing burns. What happened to your skin? That's what we need to discuss, I replied, gesturing toward the dining table where I'd arranged several folders. Once seated, I began methodically presenting the evidence I'd gathered. First, the medical reports documenting first and second-degree burns from having hot coffee thrown in my face. Then the fire department report confirming arson as the cause of my car fire, with photos of the damage. Police statements from my neighbor who witnessed Diana fleeing the scene. Bank records showing the fraudulent credit card applications in my name, traced to Diana's IP address. My parents sat in stunned silence, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to horror as the full picture emerged. "This can't be right," Mom whispered, her hands shaking as she examined a photo of my burned face from the hospital. "Diana wouldn't do this." "I didn't want to believe it either," I said gently. "But the evidence is conclusive." Dad, always more pragmatic, had turned ashen. "Have you reported this to the police?" "I've filed preliminary reports, but haven't pressed charges yet." "I wanted to speak with you first." "Why?" Mom asked, tears streaming down her face. Why would she do something so terrible? I explained about Diana's demand for $38,000 for a luxury car, her workplace confrontation, and her escalating threats when I refused. "She's always had everything she wanted," Dad said quietly, the weight of realization in his voice. "We never taught her to handle disappointment." "We were just trying to support her," Mom protested weakly. "She's more sensitive than you. Always needed more encouragement." "Mom," I said firmly, "this isn't about sensitivity. Diana assaulted me, destroyed my property, and committed identity theft because I wouldn't give her money for a luxury car. These aren't the actions of someone who's sensitive. These are the actions of someone who's never faced consequences." The silence that followed felt like a turning point, the first time my parents truly confronted the reality of their younger daughter's character. Dad finally spoke. "What are you planning to do?" "I've prepared 3 options," I explained, pulling out another folder. "First, I can press criminal charges for assault, arson, and identity theft. Given the evidence, she would likely face jail time." Mom made a small, distressed sound. "Second, I can pursue civil action for damages only. This would avoid criminal penalties, but would still create a legal record of her actions." I paused before presenting the third option. "Or, Diana can agree to comprehensive conditions, full repayment of all damages, intensive therapy, a public acknowledgement of her actions, and strict boundaries moving forward." "The third option," Mom said immediately. "We'll make sure she agrees." "It's not that simple," I cautioned. "This isn't about forcing compliance. Diana needs to genuinely understand the severity of her actions and commit to change. Otherwise, we'll be in this same situation again." "What do you need from us?" Dad asked. "First, I need you both to stop enabling her behavior. No more financial bailouts, no more excuses, no more shielding her from consequences. Second, I need you to be present when I confront her with all of this evidence." They exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. The next morning, Rebecca arrived with the finalized legal documents, both the criminal complaint and the conditional agreement that could keep Diana out of court. With everything prepared, I made my first direct contact with Diana in nearly a month. "We need to talk. My place, 2 p.m. today. Mom and Dad will be there." Her response was immediate. "Finally. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Are you ready to apologize for overreacting?" I didn't respond, letting her interpret my silence however she chose. Diana arrived looking simultaneously defiant and nervous. She faltered visibly upon seeing our parents and Rebecca seated at the dining table, my carefully arranged evidence spread before them. "What's this? Some kind of intervention?" she scoffed, though her voice lacked conviction. "Please sit down, Diana," I said calmly. For the next 30 minutes, I methodically presented the case against her. Medical reports, police statements, photographic evidence, credit fraud documentation, and witness testimonies. I laid out the potential legal consequences: up to 5 years in prison for the assault and arson, additional federal penalties for identity theft, and civil damages exceeding $100,000. Diana's face drained of color as the reality of her situation became undeniable. When I finished, she looked desperately toward our parents. "Mom? Dad? You can't let her do this to me. It wasn't that serious." For the first time in her life, Diana found no parental shield against consequences. "We've seen the evidence, Diana," Dad said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "What you did was criminal. You could have seriously injured or even killed your sister. We love you, Mom added tearfully, but we can't protect you from this. You need help. Diana's defiance crumbled. I didn't mean to hurt her that badly, she whispered. I was just so angry. Intention doesn't negate consequence, Rebecca interjected professionally. The legal system doesn't particularly care whether you meant to cause second-degree burns or just first-degree burns when you threw boiling liquid in someone's face. What happens now? Diana asked, her voice small. I slid 2 documents across the table. Option 1, I file these criminal charges today. Option 2, you sign this agreement outlining conditions that must be met to avoid legal proceedings. Diana scanned the conditions: complete repayment of all damages, approximately $42,000 including medical bills and car replacement, mandatory psychological evaluation and therapy, a formal written apology acknowledging her actions, no contact with me outside of family gatherings for 6 months, and community service at a burn treatment center. This is insane. I can't afford to pay you back $42,000. You could have thought of that before destroying my $32,000 car and causing $10,000 in medical expenses, I replied evenly. The agreement includes a payment plan based on 30% of your income until the debt is cleared. It's significantly more lenient than what a court would order, plus it avoids a criminal record. Diana looked trapped, her eyes darting between the documents, our parents, and me. The gravity of her situation had finally penetrated her protective bubble of entitlement. I need to think about this, she said. You have 24 hours, I replied. After that, I file the criminal charges. As Diana left, visibly shaken, Dad asked, Are you really prepared to send your sister to jail? I met his gaze steadily. I'm prepared to hold her accountable for her choices. For the first time in her life, Diana needs to understand that actions have consequences. What happens next is entirely up to her. The next morning, a sharp knocking woke me at 6:30 a.m. When I checked my security camera, I saw Diana on my front step, eyes red-rimmed from crying, shoulders hunched against the early spring chill. Despite the restraining order I'd filed after the attack, which technically made her presence illegal, I decided to hear her out. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. You're violating the restraining order by being here, I said by way of greeting. I know, Diana whispered, her voice hoarse. I didn't sleep last night. Lindsay, please don't file those charges. I'll do anything. For the first time in my memory, my sister looked genuinely afraid. Not manipulatively tearful or performatively distressed, truly frightened of the consequences facing her. The agreement is non-negotiable, I stated firmly. All conditions must be met. I'll sign it, she said quickly. I'll do therapy, community service, whatever you want. But the money. Her voice cracked. I can barely make rent. I don't know how I'll ever pay that much. You should have considered that before destroying my car and assaulting me, I replied, unmoved. Financial consequences are part of accountability. Diana's posture crumpled further. I know what I did was terrible. I was just so angry that you wouldn't help me when you could afford it. It felt like you were judging me, looking down on me like you always have. I've never looked down on you, Diana. I've been concerned about your choices and frustrated by your entitlement, but I've always wanted what's best for you. That's why I refused to give you $38,000 for a luxury car you couldn't afford, because it would have reinforced destructive patterns. I see that now, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I really messed up, worse than ever before. I could have seriously hurt you. I didn't think about that when I threw the coffee. I was just so angry. And then when you didn't respond, didn't press charges immediately, I thought maybe I'd gotten away with it, but it was eating me up inside knowing what I'd done. I studied her, trying to gauge the sincerity of this apparent epiphany. Diana had always been convincingly contrite when cornered, only to revert to old behaviors once the threat passed. Come inside, I finally said. We need to discuss the terms in detail. At my dining table, the same place where I'd presented the evidence to our parents, Diana signed the agreement with shaking hands. Each page seemed to drive home the reality of her situation. When she reached the psychological evaluation requirement, she paused. Do you really think I need therapy? Diana, you committed felony assault and arson because I wouldn't buy you a luxury car. Yes, I think you need therapy. She flinched but continued signing. Later that week, we gathered with our parents for what the agreement termed a family accountability meeting. Diana read her formal apology, acknowledging every action in detail without excuses or qualifications. Her psychological evaluation had been completed, with the therapist recommending twice-weekly sessions to address what she described as narcissistic tendencies and impulse control issues. I'm not saying this to hurt you, the therapist explained to Diana during our group session, but to help you understand patterns that are damaging your relationships and your future. These behaviors didn't develop overnight, and they won't change overnight either. Mom wept quietly as the therapist outlined how their parenting approach had contributed to Diana's sense of entitlement. Dad sat stoically, occasionally nodding in pained recognition. We thought we were showing love, Mom said defensively. We never meant to create these problems. Most parents don't, the therapist acknowledged. But intention and impact are different things. The good news is that family dynamics can change when everyone commits to healthier patterns. Diana's transformation wasn't instantaneous or without setbacks. 2 months into her therapy, she called me in tears after being denied a loan. It's not fair. My credit is ruined because of the fraud alert, and I need a new laptop for work. The fraud alert exists because you attempted identity theft, I reminded her calmly. And yes, that has consequences. Have you saved any money toward a laptop? How can I save when half my paycheck goes to you for repayment? She snapped. It's 30%, not half, I corrected. And that's considerably more generous than what a court would have ordered. After a pause, Diana sighed. You're right. I'm sorry for lashing out. Old habits, I guess. My therapist says I need to practice sitting with discomfort instead of expecting immediate solutions from others. That sounds like good advice. A week later, Diana sent me a text message. Found a refurbished laptop within my budget. Not what I wanted, but it works for now. Small victory. Definitely a victory, I replied, feeling cautiously optimistic. The community service requirement proved unexpectedly transformative. Diana spent weekends at the burn treatment center, initially resentful but gradually developing genuine empathy for patients. After her required hours were completed, she continued volunteering. Some of these kids have burns over 80% of their bodies from accidents that happened in seconds, she told me during one of our now monthly coffee meetings with appropriately lukewarm beverages. It puts my problems in perspective and makes me realize how much worse things could have been if the coffee had hit your eyes. 6 months after the incident, our family gathered for Thanksgiving at Mom's house. The atmosphere was different, more authentic, less performative. Diana arrived on time, bringing a homemade pie and helping with preparations without being asked. When Mom instinctively tried to serve Diana first, Dad gently intervened. Let's serve Lindsay first today, he suggested. She did most of the cooking. It was a small moment, but it symbolized the gradual recalibration of our family dynamic. After dinner, Diana asked if we could speak privately. In Mom's back garden, bundled against the November chill, she handed me an envelope. It's not much, she said as I opened it to find a check for $500, above her required monthly payment. I got a small bonus at work and wanted to put it toward what I owe you. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I wanted you to know I'm serious about making amends. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. That means a lot. My therapist asked me something that really stuck with me, Diana continued, watching her breath form clouds in the cold air. She asked when I stopped seeing you as a person with your own needs and started seeing you as just an extension of my needs. I couldn't answer her because I couldn't remember a time when I did see you that way. You were always just there. Reliable Lindsay who had it all together, who didn't need anything from anyone. She met my eyes directly. I never considered that you worked hard for everything you have, or that you had your own struggles and dreams. I'm sorry it took all this for me to start seeing you as a whole person. It wasn't a perfect ending. Diana still had years of payments ahead. She still occasionally slipped into old patterns when stressed. Our parents still sometimes enabled her in subtle ways. But fundamental change had begun, not just in Diana, but in all of us. As we walked back inside to join the family, I realized that my calculated silence had accomplished what years of arguments and explanations couldn't. By refusing to participate in the established dynamic, I'd created space for a new one to emerge. It wasn't forgiveness that Diana had needed from me, it was boundaries. 6 months stretched into a year, and the transformation in our family continued to unfold in ways both subtle and profound. My burns healed completely, leaving no physical scars, though the emotional aftermath took longer to process. Diana maintained her therapy schedule, gradually reducing to weekly sessions as she developed healthier coping mechanisms. The payment plan remained intact, with Diana occasionally adding extra when possible. While the financial restitution was important, the psychological growth it represented mattered more. Diana learning to fulfill obligations even when inconvenient or difficult. My own healing journey proved more complex than anticipated. Despite Diana's ongoing transformation, I found myself flinching when someone raised their voice unexpectedly or moved too quickly near my face. A therapist of my own helped me work through these trauma responses. What you experienced wasn't just physical assault, Dr. Carter explained during one session. It was a profound betrayal by someone you should have been able to trust implicitly. That kind of wound takes time to heal. One unexpected challenge was navigating well-meaning but misguided comments from people who learned about the incident. You should just forgive and forget, a colleague suggested after Diana attended a work function and someone asked about our matching necklaces, gifts from our grandmother. Family is too important to hold grudges. Forgiveness and accountability aren't mutually exclusive, I replied. I can forgive Diana while still holding her responsible for her actions. That distinction became my mantra. True forgiveness wasn't about pretending the harm never happened or allowing harmful patterns to continue unchecked. It was about releasing the anger and resentment while maintaining healthy boundaries. Diana seemed to understand this nuance better than most. During one of our now regular Sunday brunches, she addressed it directly. My therapist says some people will try to rush your forgiveness because it makes them uncomfortable to acknowledge that someone they know did something terrible, she said, stirring her coffee, which she now always ordered at a comfortable drinking temperature. She says true reconciliation requires the person who caused harm to respect the timeline of the person who was harmed. Your therapist sounds very wise, I replied, touched by her insight. I had a good model for finding the right professional help, Diana smiled, raising her mug in a small toast to me. These moments of genuine connection accumulated gradually, building a relationship foundation based on mutual respect rather than established roles and expectations. Our parents underwent their own reckonings. Mom initially struggled the most, alternating between enabling Diana's occasional backsliding and overcompensating with strict judgment. Dad found his voice more easily, setting clear boundaries while maintaining compassion. During a family therapy session marking the 1-year anniversary of the incident, our therapist asked each of us to share the most important lesson we'd learned. Mom went first. I've learned that love isn't about making someone's path easier. Sometimes it's about letting them face challenges so they can develop their own strength. Dad nodded. I've learned that treating children equally doesn't mean treating them identically. Different kids need different types of support, but they all need appropriate boundaries. Diana looked down at her hands before speaking. I've learned that I'm not entitled to anything from anyone, not money, not time, not forgiveness. Everything is a gift, not an obligation. And when people do give those gifts, I should treasure them, not expect more. When my turn came, I thought carefully. I've learned that sometimes the strongest response isn't immediate action or reaction, but strategic patience. And that holding someone accountable can be the greatest act of love if it helps them become their best self. The journey wasn't linear. Diana still had moments of entitlement or self-pity, especially when the monthly payments prevented her from buying something she wanted. I still experienced occasional flashbacks to the attack. Our parents still sometimes fell into old patterns of differential treatment. But the framework had fundamentally changed. Diana found healthier ways to process disappointment. I became more comfortable expressing my needs directly. Our parents recognized and actively worked to correct their enabling behaviors. 18 months after the incident, Diana was promoted at work, her longest continuous employment ever. She called me first with the news. It came with a raise, she said excitedly. I want to increase my monthly payments to you. That's not necessary, I assured her. The current plan is working fine. It's important to me, she insisted. Besides, I calculated that with the raise and a few budget adjustments, I can pay you back completely in 3 years instead of 5. That matters to me, Lindsay. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about showing myself and everyone else that I can follow through on my commitments. That night, reflecting on our conversation, I realized how profoundly our relationship had evolved. Diana was no longer making choices based solely on immediate gratification or the expectations of others. She was developing her own internal compass of values and responsibilities. My approach, the calculated silence followed by clear, non-negotiable boundaries, had worked better than I could have imagined. Not because it punished Diana, but because it created the conditions for her to confront her behavior without deflection or excuse. 2 years after the coffee attack and car fire, Diana completed her community service hours at the burn center, but continued volunteering monthly. These kids have become my friends, she explained. And honestly, it's a powerful reminder of the consequences of losing control. She'd also begun attending financial management workshops and had started a small but growing emergency fund. When her car needed expensive repairs, she handled it herself rather than asking for help, a seemingly small achievement that represented enormous growth. During a quiet moment at a family dinner, Dad pulled me aside. I want you to know, he said, voice thick with emotion, that what you did for Diana, standing firm when it would have been easier to either cut her off completely or continue enabling her, was an incredible act of love. Your mother and I should have done something similar years ago. We failed you both in different ways, and I'm sorry for that. We all did the best we could with what we knew at the time, I told him, surprised by my own serenity on the subject. What matters is that we're all learning and growing now. The experience changed my other relationships too. I became more direct about my boundaries with friends, colleagues, and even Jason, who had proposed 6 months after the incident. Our marriage was stronger for my newfound clarity about what I would and wouldn't accept in relationships. 3 years after that fateful demand for a luxury car, Diana drove to my house in her sensibly purchased used Subaru, bought with her own saved money after her Civic finally gave out. We sat on my back porch, enjoying the spring weather that once marked the beginning of our most difficult chapter. Do you remember what you told me when I asked why you didn't immediately press charges? Diana asked. You said, sometimes the strongest move isn't the most obvious one. I think about that all the time now in all kinds of situations. It's changed how I approach conflicts at work, with friends, with everyone. I smiled, watching a hummingbird dart among my garden flowers. The funny thing is, I wasn't sure it would work. I just knew that the usual approach, immediate confrontation and punishment, would only reinforce your sense of being victimized by circumstances rather than responsible for them. It was the right call, Diana acknowledged. If you'd had me arrested immediately, I would have been furious, convinced you were overreacting. I wouldn't have had to face myself. She paused. Though I'm still glad you didn't actually send me to jail. That was never the goal, I assured her. The goal was always for you to become the person I knew you could be underneath all those layers of entitlement. Diana leaned back in her chair, contemplative. Do you think Mom and Dad feel guilty about how they raised me? Sometimes, I admitted. But I've told them what I'm telling you now. We all did the best we could with what we understood at the time. The important thing isn't dwelling on past mistakes, but learning from them. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, I reflected on how our family had transformed. The entitled sister who once demanded $38,000 for a luxury car now lived within her means and honored her commitments. The enabling parents who once reinforced harmful patterns now maintained loving but firm boundaries. And I had discovered my own capacity for strategic patience and deliberate response rather than immediate reaction. The journey hadn't been easy or quick, and it certainly wasn't complete. Real change never is. But the painful chapter that began with boiling coffee and flames had ultimately forged something stronger and more genuine than what existed before. Sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't immediate retaliation, but strategic silence. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone isn't giving them what they want, but helping them develop the character to earn it themselves. And sometimes the most difficult people in our lives can transform when finally confronted with the natural consequences of their actions. Have you ever had to stand firm against a family member's unreasonable demands? Did you choose immediate consequences or a more strategic approach? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and the other person. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you strength and wisdom in navigating your own challenging relationships.